Hello, everyone, and welcome back to class. Last week, you had an opportunity to really dive into the historical aspects of social work and why social work is so important in our communities. Today, we're going to discuss social justice and advocacy. Social justice and advocacy are really terms that go hand in hand, in which you can't talk about social injustices without talking about advocacy if you are really looking to make some sort of social change. My first introduction to advocacy came during my second semester at Wayne State as a pre social work student. As a pre social work student, I became involved in one of the school's social work student organization called the National Association of Social Workers Student Chapter. Now, at this time of my participation in this organization, Hurricane Katrina happened in New Orleans. Our group came together and brainstormed ways in which we could offer support to those individuals who were displaced to Detroit as a result of the hurricane. When we decided to collect food and hygiene items and take it to a hotel that was in Southfield, Michigan, where some of the individuals were living at the time. When we got to the hotel and were distributing the items outside of the hotel, some of the residents began to tell us their story of how they felt they were being treated unfairly by the hospital staff. At this time, again, I'm a pre social work student, not really knowing anything about advocacy. I recall some of the students who were already in the program rallying together to think about ways in which they can tell those in authority what was happening and what needed, and brainstorm ways in which things could be better for the residents who were living at that hotel. What I learned from that experience was the real need for social workers to advocate on behalf of clients who felt that they did not have a voice. As you can imagine, those who were displaced to Detroit were in a state of shock for some. They were definitely in a state of crisis, and they wanted someone to not only hear about their experiences, but try to brainstorm ways in which things could be better for them. From that position, I also learned that we have to work within the system to be able to make changes. One of the things a couple of the social workers decided to do, for example, when we were at the hotel, was call the news. So we were there, the news came, and it just turned into this really big situation. In fact, we were called into the dean's office the following week because we made the news. I think looking back, what we should have done was at least start with talking to someone at the hotel and serving as an advocate at that level. And then once we realized that it was not going to change, and then move up the proper change of commands. Keeping in mind, we were students at the time, so things got a little out of control. But I still recall that as being my first attempt to advocate on behalf of a vulnerable population. In social work practice, we believe that social justice is both a process and a goal. The goal of social justice is full and equal participation of all groups in a society that is mutually shaped to meet their needs. Social justice also includes a vision of society in which the distribution of resources is equitable and all members are physically and psychologically safe and secure. In social work practice, we also envision a society in which individuals are both self determining, which means that they're able to develop to their full capacity, and they're interdependent, meaning they're capable of interacting democratically with others. We recognize that social justice or developing a social justice process is not simple because of the oppression that exists within our society and our world. We have to develop and analyze oppression so that we can understand how it operates at the individual, cultural, and institutional levels. We have to also understand the historical aspect of oppression as well. Often, when people begin to study the phenomena of oppression, they start to recognize that human beings are different from each other in many ways based upon gender, ethnicity, skin color, first language, age, ability status, religion, sexual orientation, and economic class. That's the obvious first step that people tend to think of is that if we can just begin to appreciate differences and treat each other with respect, that everything will be all right and there will be no oppression. This view actually represents one of the famous quotes by Rodney King in response to the riots following the beating and the release of the police officer who were filmed beating him. Rodney King says, "Why can't we all just get along? I really wish it was that simple, but we know that it's not." Instead, what we know is that we're born with a set of social identity. And those social identities predisposition us to unequal roles in the dynamic of oppression. I know sometimes it's a struggle to understand how what roles we have been socialized to play and how they affect us with issues of oppression in our lives, but they do. We often have to have conversations about how our social identities are maintained and how they are in relationship to issues of oppression. One of your learning activities this week is for us to talk about diversity. And the way we're going to talk about diversity is to do a personal inventory of the various social identities that you have as it relates to gender, race, age, sexual orientation, religion, economic status, and ability and disability status. The results of this assignment should give you a sober look at how there are a variety of social identities that really shape our socialization in society. This assignment will be posted in the module section of our Canvas for this week. You will also have a link to upload your social identity wheel in that module as well. But back to social justice. As you see here, social justice is one of the core social work values. As a social worker, you'll be challenged and called to address social injustices. We usually do this as we think about making change in our society on behalf of vulnerable or oppressed individuals or groups of people. As you can see here, it says social workers' social change efforts are focused primarily on issues of poverty, unemployment, promote sensitivity to and knowledge about oppression, and cultural and ethnic diversity. You actually have a separate um, diversity class once you're in the School of Social Work, because we recognize how important that is for you to be able to advocate on behalf of your clients. You need to know a little bit about their culture and their ethnicity. We also challenge social workers to advocate around resources, equal opportunities, and meaningful participation in the decision making process. And what that means is that if you're ever at a table where decisions are made, we hope that social workers are reminded or take a look around and see who's not at the table. And you bring their voices to the table. You have the decision makers remember that their decisions impact a variety of individuals. That's your role as a social worker.